Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two and devoted homemaker. Join me on this journey as we explore the beauty of slow and simple living, where life unfolds at its own unhurried pace. I'll take you through my experiences of slowing down, tending to our allotment plot, finding joy in the little things and making the most of our small home. Together we'll learn to live in harmony with the ever-changing seasons, discovering the magic that lies in embracing the present moment. So let's embark on this enriching adventure towards a more intentional and fulfilling life. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. If you're new here, I'm Amy and I host this podcast all about slow, simple, intentional living. It covers so many different things. I have nearly 100 episodes. How mad is that? I have nearly 100 episodes. Hold on, my cat's here and she'd like to tell me something. Yes? Okay, now that's out of the way. Let's get back to it. So I have almost 100 episodes, which is crazy to me. But I have nearly 100 episodes all about everything you should ever want to know about simple living, slow living, seasonal living, being more mindful, how you can live with the ebb and flow of the seasons, how to embrace a more low toxic lifestyle, nutrition, seasonal nutrition. Oh my goodness, there's everything. I'm sure you can find an episode in the back catalogue of something that will suit you down to the ground. So go check out all of the previous episodes. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please, can I beg you to do so? It really helps if you subscribe, but if you could leave a review as well, that would be amazing, because it helps show the algorithms of the world that there is valuable stuff in this podcast, and it will push it out to more people who need it, just like me, just like you. So please go and do that. I would be so eternally grateful. Okay, so today I am going to be talking about balcony gardening, but you can sub in small space gardening if you don't have a balcony. So often many of us don't have a lot of space to work with when it comes to growing our own produce, and so many of us wish we had more space, but cost of living and cost of buying these houses in the first place means that oftentimes it's just not possible. I live in one of the most expensive areas, and I love my little house. It's so often said to me, like, are you going to move? When are you going to move? And I don't want to. I really, sometimes I'm an R, right? There's been some things here over the years, if you've caught previous episodes, where I thought, like, I'm out of here. But on the whole, I absolutely love where I live. I love my home. It's perfect. I think the size is great. We live in a 720 square foot house, which to some is tiny, but I love it. I love it. I love the space we have. I love just figuring it out and trying to be more intentional with what we have. And we're very lucky that we do have outdoor space in terms of a balcony, but we do also have an allotment. I want to make this clear before I head into the rest of the episode, but for most of the time I lived here, we didn't have the allotment, and when it came to gardening, I was solely on the balcony. So I want to share with you how you can garden and grow your own produce and just figure it out in a small space, whether that is a small patio, whether it's a balcony, whether maybe it's a small allotment plot, or maybe just a small garden. Most of us are not, we just don't have these sprawling gardens or sprawling anything. And some of us choose to live in a smaller environment anyway, which, by the way, I think is ace. I think less is more in pretty much every area of life. I don't need more space. I need less stuff. So, right, let's dive into balcony gardening, small space gardening, whatever we're going to call it. So, why consider balcony gardening or small space gardening? So, for me, it just brought me so much joy, because when you start gardening, whether it be in a small or large space, just the transformation alone just brings so much joy. and you can transform the smallest of outdoor spaces into really lush and really productive gardens. Now, like I said, I have a balcony and it is all concrete and metal, and I have, over the years tried to bring in some more natural elements. I have like a nice flooring, which is plastic, not so natural, but a really good hard wearing flooring. And I did try wood at first, but the underneath still had to be plastic, and therefore it just didn't last. It didn't last like this current flooring is. So it's intended to be there for a while, but then just also add in some more natural elements, like I have bamboo screening, I have wooden trellis. I'm training my ivy to kind of grow around my trellis, not fast, but I am training it to do that, and it just brings everything in nature a little bit more closer into your living space, and it just kind of provides for me this little retreat away from everything else at home. And I step out onto my balcony and it's full of like tomato plants and fresh herbs, and the way it's set up, like I can just see sort of like the horizon, and it just looks lovely. And honestly, it's like a little slice of paradise at home. I spend as much time as humanly possible out there, all times of year. Obviously through the summer right now is a little easier, but yeah, it's just beautiful. You can head on over to my Substack, which is the slowlivingcollective.substack.com, and you can find my balcony transformation on there. But yeah, I just love it. It is just the most beautiful of spaces. So what are the benefits of growing food in a more urban setting? So, like, first and foremost, of course, when you grow your own food, you have a constant supply of fresh, nutritious and seasonal produce. You're only going to be able to grow seasonal produce for the most part, which is produce that is firstly in line with the season that you're currently in, and also for your locality. There's no way I'm growing a banana, for example. Now, greenhouse gardening can provide some benefits in growing things that maybe aren't too native, but on the whole, you are going to be growing nutritious seasonal produce. And is there anything quite like the taste of homegrown tomatoes? Because I don't think there is. A couple of years ago, when we first got the allotment, we hadn't had it for very long. We got it in like late October time. There wasn't much we could do over the winter. I have a very clay-based soil, which I didn't really know at the time. Compacted it a little bit, but spent the winter just doing some sort of tidying up and getting it ready. And then when spring rolled round, we were a bit more ready to go in a bit harder with it. And we did really well the first year. I was really proud of us. But one of my neighbours was so kind and generous and gave me loads of tomatoes, knowing that it was my first year. And he just, obviously grew the most incredible plants, because I grew the tastiest tomatoes I have ever tasted. However, I am going to take a little bit of the glory there as well, because that was the first year that I actually did tomatoes myself, where I grew from seed, and I picked the type, the Costoluto Fiorentina ones, and they have been an absolute staple in my growing ever since. There's not a season that passes me by where I do not grow them from seed. They are these beautiful like beef tomatoes. They are massive and very, very tasty. So between my win and the amazing work that one of my plot neighbours did, I had the most beautiful tasting homegrown tomatoes. I couldn't get enough of it. When the season ended, I was gutted. There is just nothing like it. Shop bought tomatoes just don't compare. So there's nothing like the taste of things like tomatoes or strawberries, things that are very easy to grow in containers, on a balcony, on a patio. And if you're like me and really appreciate sort of nutritious organic food, then you know exactly how your food was grown. And then, you're making sure that it's free from pesticides and chemicals, because you have observed that entire process. And if you're anything like me and you have a balcony that's at least a little way off the ground, you're actually going to be free from a lot of pests as well. There is relatively little that bothers my plants up on the balcony. Slugs and snails don't get up there. it just doesn't have a problem. And it's funny because when I grew on the balcony for years and years, every year bigger and better than the year before. I really did as much as I possibly could with the space that I had. And when I went to the allotment and I had to deal with slugs and snails, like, I was out of my depth, because those bad boys just don't get up onto my balcony at all. So having to deal with, all of these different things, like I got blossom end rot on my tomatoes. I've had black fly on my broad beans, slugs and snails eating everything, caterpillars, butterflies, you name it. You know what it's like if you're a gardener. But you just don't get that on a balcony for the most part. And so that is fantastic. But for me, growing food that is free from pesticides and chemicals is the biggest win that I could ever have. But also, as well as that, the convenience of having your little garden right outside your door is just so convenient. Like I am doing on my balcony this year, I've grown things over the years that people maybe wouldn't even think about growing on balconies, like beetroot and potatoes. And I've done, I'm just trying to think. I've just tried everything: radishes and cucumbers and carrots. Like, there is nothing I wouldn't try on my balcony. But this year I'm focusing solely on tomatoes. So I grew so many tomatoes in the greenhouse from seed, and I put loads of them out in the ground at the allotment. But what I also did was I took one of each variety, because I did multiple varieties. I took one of each variety and I brought it back home, potted it up, and I have one of each variety on the balcony as well. And so it'll be interesting to see which does better as well. I came back from holiday at the end of June, and my Costoluto Fiorentino ones were just like, they've taken over. It's incredible. I don't have a tomato on it yet, but I am ever so hopeful. So yeah, it's just like having it outside the door is incredible. And this year I'm doing more herbs on the balcony. That was my goal. I didn't have a whole lot of prep time for the balcony this year because we had building work outside, so my balcony was completely off limits. But hopefully next year it will be even more thriving than it is now. I might even think of some different ways that I can use my balcony to do what I want to do. I don't know, just making more space, but so we can still actually use it, because there are times when it's been so full of plants that it's been difficult to get out there. So yeah, just having something outside your door, you can just step outside, pick it, and you're done. Like if we want some oregano for a top of a homemade pizza, we just go out and pick it. And how incredible is that? But also, I have small children, and I find gardening such a brilliant educational tool. Trying to teach them where our food comes from, but also to be patient, that we mustn't pick things before they are ripe. And for me as well, I find it as an activity very therapeutic. Helps me. I have anxiety, really, really helps me. When I'm gardening and my hands are busy, I just feel just a lot more at peace. But also as well, one of the things about growing your own little garden, whatever size you have, is just the environmental impact and sustainability of gardening as well. By growing your own food, you're reducing the need for transportation, packaging, storage, all of those things that come with store-bought produce. We're probably never going to be self-sufficient, not even with the allotment. It's just not possible. There always is going to be a carbon footprint somewhere, but this can help lower your carbon footprint. So even if you're just doing it in a small space like the balcony, you are doing your bit. And plus, plants absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen, so it's going to help improve the air quality around your home as well. When you create a balcony garden, you are contributing to urban biodiversity. Plants can attract pollinators like bees and butterflies, which sometimes you don't see as much of in a more urban environment. So as much as bees terrify me because I am allergic to their sting, I do encourage them both here and at the allotment as well. Something else we do on the balcony, it's not very professional, I wouldn't say, is trying to conserve water. It has rained a lot this year, right? So just putting out tubs that I use outside for gardening on the balcony and catching the rainwater and then using it to water the plants. It's that simple. I don't want to have anything like a water butt up there. It will take up a lot of room, and also you have to be aware if you are living in a flat, there are weight requirements on things like balconies. Having a very heavy item full of water might not fulfill those requirements, so that's worth looking into. I know you can get smaller ones, you can get narrower ones, and it is just worth just sort of looking at, if you are in a balcony, what maybe the weight requirements are for your building as well. And you can also do a little bit of composting. Not so easy if you don't have bare ground to put it on. I take all of our stuff to compost at the allotment, but you're able to just better engage in sustainable gardening practice even in a small space. Are you ready to slow down and embrace simplicity even in the midst of life's imperfections? I've got just the thing for you. Discover my free guide, Imperfect Slow Living, designed to help you find peace and simplicity in your everyday life, no matter what it looks like. Slow down and breathe, unwind and rediscover calm, no matter how hectic life gets. Simplify your life one step at a time with practical tips. You don't have to be perfect to enjoy the beauty of slow living. It's time to make a change. Visit theslowlivingcollective.com/slowliving to download your free guide today. Start your journey towards a more deliberate and intentional life. Slow living isn't about perfection. It's about finding peace in the imperfections of life. Download your guide and embrace a simpler, slower and more meaningful life. That's theslowlivingcollective.com/slowliving. So if you only have a small space and you're thinking, what the hell do I grow? I'm new to gardening. I don't know what to grow. I don't know what's going to thrive in a small environment. First and foremost, I want to say this: grow what you enjoy. Don't be growing things you don't enjoy. That applies whether you have a balcony, a small garden, a patio, an allotment, a farm, whatever it looks like for you. Grow what you enjoy eating, because you're going to have to eat it. For example, the first year on the allotment, I grew radishes because I knew they grew fast because I'd tried them on the balcony before. I don't like radishes in any format, but I did enjoy the win of growing them, I guess, but I don't like radishes. So just grow what you enjoy. That is the most important thing, I think, when it comes to growing anywhere. But moving on from that, let's start with some great plants that you can grow on your balcony, on a patio, or in a small garden. Growing your own herbs, vegetables, fruits can be much easier than you think it is. So when it comes to herbs, a couple that I really like growing: rosemary, love it. I just love the smell of rosemary. We use a lot of rosemary. We quite like things like moussaka, and it pairs really nicely with lamb. But rosemary thrives really well in a well-drained soil and with plenty of sunlight. And it smells great. My balcony is south-facing, so it gets a lot of sunlight there. It's just really, really good. Mint is another good one. I actually didn't grow my mint from seed this year. I actually saved mint from the supermarket, split it up, and largely it's done all right. Always grow mint in containers. Never ever grow it in the ground. It spreads so quickly and you'll just be fighting it in the ground forever. If you do want it in the ground, sink a pot in and put the mint within the pot. It will still trap the roots, but it's still in the ground. But yeah, it's really hardy. It grows really well in containers. And another one is basil's. Great for a sunny balcony, patios, garden. Really easy to grow, and I love basil. I love it. So good. Tomatoes are another good one when it comes to vegetables. Tomatoes work really well in containers, even some of the bigger ones. So traditionally people say that you should grow the smaller kinds of tomatoes, like plum tomatoes or cherry tomatoes, or maybe like tumbling tomatoes. There's one that I grow called Cherry Falls, but actually I grow all kinds of tomatoes, both in the ground at the allotment, but also in containers up on the balcony as well. And as long as you do a nice big pot for the bigger varieties, they do fine. They need plenty of sunlight and regular watering, but other than that, go for it. Peppers is something that really thrives on my balcony and doesn't thrive at the allotment. I have tried to grow peppers at the allotment for 4 summers and nada. On the balcony, they do great. They need a lot of warmth, they need a very sunny spot, and they also do need a lot of watering. Lettuce is easy to grow in pots as well. I grew, I think a butterhead lettuce, which was great. And also I really like the salad bowl lettuce. They grow really quickly and you can just harvest them over and over again. Radishes are also really good for small spaces, and you can just plant them in quite shallow containers. When it comes to fruit, I really love strawberries. You can't go wrong with strawberries on the balcony. They're really, really easy to grow, but also you can get small little trees as well that are great for balconies as well. So it's really important to think about how your balcony is going to work, and how your plants will work in your local climate. So for example, as I mentioned, I have a south facing balcony, so I know that my balcony is going to be sometimes relentlessly hot, but plants do thrive there. I have never come across anything that doesn't really grow on the balcony. Maybe some herbs that require, prefer a bit more shade. But other than that, everything else just loves it because it can get really, really hot there. Something that's really important, and I touched on it already, is just consider the space you have available. So while I absolutely urge you to go wild and just try everything, just think about the space you have and how you can utilize it best. I have a lot of balcony hanging pots which I've gathered over the years. They can be quite expensive if you're buying multiple. I have sort of just gathered them over the years. You might be able to get them from places like cheaper shops, maybe Poundland or Pound Stretcher. They often have gardening aisles, sort of from spring onwards really, but also you can check things like Marketplace to see if people are getting rid of any. They're really good to sort of maximize your growing space. And also I use long planters on the floor for things like cucumber plants, and then I can sort of grow them up a piece of trellis or some bamboo canes, however that works. They obviously have the little grabbers, they grab out and attach everywhere, so they're doing really well on my balcony this year, so I'm really pleased with that. So just think about the space you have. Think about, some plants can grow quite tall. My tomatoes are growing quite tall, whereas you've got things like lettuces or radishes that can stay small as well. You want to make sure that they're still getting sunlight, so just organise your space as best you can. Now, something else I'm going to recommend, which you might not need on a balcony or patio, but might be helpful if you have a small garden, and that's companion planting. So you can companion plant plants, and that means planting different varieties of plants together, and they benefit each other. This can sometimes help maximize the space you have and improve your plant health, and it is excellent for deterring pests. Now, up on a balcony, I don't need much pest deterring at all, but there's some things that I have learned that work really well together. Tomatoes and basil, amazing. Basil can really enhance the flavour of tomatoes, and if you are in a space that does get pests, basil really helps that. Also marigolds really help as well. Plant marigolds everywhere at the allotment. But also lettuce and radishes go well together. Strawberries and mint go well together. But like I said earlier, keep your mint in its own pot because it just goes wild and takes over, and you don't want it to sort of hurt the strawberry plants because it's just engulfing them. Are you looking for a delicious way to live a more sustainable and mindful life? Look no further, because I've got something special just for you. Introducing Riverford Organic, your gateway to fresh organic fruit and vegetable boxes delivered right to your doorstep. When you choose Riverford, you're not just eating organic, you're supporting an ethical business that believes in food that's good for the planet and your well-being. Eating organic means you're savouring food grown with care, free from harmful chemicals and absolutely bursting with flavour. By choosing Riverford, you're supporting a business that is committed to sustainability, is employee-owned and passionate about reducing food waste. Embrace the seasons with a rotating variety of fruit and vegetables, fresh, local and in harmony with nature. Riverford has been a game changer for our family, and I think it could be for yours too. There is nothing more exciting for me than grabbing my Riverford box off my doorstep on delivery day. But there's more. As a treat for you guys, you can enjoy a £15 credit towards your second order. Simply sign up at theslowlivingcollective.com/Riverford to claim your credit and start your journey towards healthier, ethical and more seasonal eating. So I think as well, before I go, it's really important to touch on how you can still be quite sustainable in your gardening practices, even in a small space, which is going to help you maintain a really healthy, eco-friendly, small balcony patio garden. So efficient watering really helps. Only water your plants in the morning or late in the evening. This helps reduce evaporation. And if you use a watering can with a narrow spout, this can direct water to the base of the plants, which minimises water waste. Also, just be mindful if you live on a balcony that your pots aren't leaking water onto maybe the balcony below. I have once or twice watered my neighbours' heads, so always remember that. Most people don't want composty, soily water dropping onto them, so just be mindful of that. You can often get planters that either don't have holes in them or they sit on like a little tray. Just be sort of really mindful. I actually set up some of my hanging pots always leak water, even though they have like fixed bottom. So what I do is I always make sure I have like a floor planter underneath, and so any water that drips from one just drips into the one below and then doesn't roll off the edge of the balcony. So it's just being really smart with things like that. You can use self-watering planters. They have a reservoir at the bottom that supplies a steady supply of water to the roots. Some of those trays you can just water the tray, especially if you're going to be going away for a day or two, and they'll just be able to absorb that water. But also collecting rainwater as well, like I said, you can do. It's really simple. You don't need a water butt, just some old gardening pots. I have some like old plastic pots and I just gather water in them. I just leave them out. Half of my balcony is slightly shaded by the balcony above. I just leave them out in the unshaded part and they just gather a lot of water over time. Also, another thing you can do is try and employ organic gardening techniques. Use natural pest control methods if you need them. That can be maybe making your own like soap spray. If you're getting black fly, you just need a little bit of dish soap and some water in a spray bottle and do that. You can also use companion planting, like I said, that helps repel a lot of pests as well. And just try and be as organic as possible. Don't use anything chemical based. You just don't want it in your food. You can get fertilizers that are organic. Just check what's in everything. And you can also start a small compost bin on your balcony for scraps if you wanted to as well. Some people like doing that, some people don't. You can also sort of get into sort of recycling and upcycling stuff. Check places like Marketplace or any sort of local groups and things like that. See if people are giving stuff away. But you can also get really creative and use old containers like buckets, cans, anything for planters. You just have to make sure they have proper drainage. Otherwise the soil gets dead stinky. But you can also, things can get too wet if the water isn't able to drain away and you won't get great ground plants. You can also make your own plant markers from things like ice lolly sticks. I like to buy wooden like fat wooden ice lolly sticks rather than the thin ones. But you can absolutely just recycle them if you want. You can also create a vertical garden using old pallets. I would love to do it. Really, really would love to do it. Maybe a job for another day, but I would absolutely love to try it. Get a good pallet, and it'd probably have to be cut down a bit, but yeah, watch this space. Maybe something I'll do in the future. So all of these things can really just help you create a really thriving garden in a very, very small space, whether it be a balcony, a patio, a small garden. It just gives you such a unique opportunity to grow your own food, even in a more urban setting. And I think sometimes we look at these spaces and we think there's no way, I couldn't do much here. But actually, when you think about it, you absolutely can. And I think so often as well, people think there's no way I could grow this, that and the other, on a balcony. Like, I could never grow carrots on a balcony. Give it a try. Honestly, everything I have done in the last 8 years of living here and having the balcony, I haven't seen anybody else do. I don't really follow anybody that does balcony gardening. All of my follows are for like allotments or gardens. I have always just gone and done it, and I think that's the only way you learn with gardening anyway. Give it a try. Get a massive pot and fill it with compost and stick your seed potatoes in it. You'll be really, really surprised. You're probably not going to be self-sufficient, but you are going to feel so proud of yourself when you have all of this produce that you have grown on your tiny balcony. My balcony is 4 meters by 1 meter. It is not huge, but it's an okay size, and I just make the most of it, and that's what you've got to do. Make the most of it, try it, and only grow what you are going to eat. So I hope that was helpful. I really hope that gave you some ideas on how you can garden and grow produce in a small space. Urban homesteading is, about working with what you have. And urban homesteading is about employing the techniques, the ideas, and the way of living. You don't have to have grand amount of space. You can do so much with a small space. It's about who you are and what's in your mind, what's in your heart, and how you can employ it even in a small space. So don't give up because you don't have a lot of space. You absolutely can be an urban homesteader, a balcony gardener. Go out there, give it a try, find a small space, find a pot, get started, chuck some potatoes in and give it a go. You're not too late to chuck potatoes in for the year. You could start your Christmas potatoes. So go find a large pot, a bucket, anything. Go get some seed potatoes and get started. I promise you won't regret it, and you'll feel so proud that you've grown not only your own produce, but against all odds in a small space as well. So I hope that was helpful. Be sure to check out my Substack, which is where I do all of my blogging, newsletter stuff. You can find me at theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. You can also find me on Instagram at The Slow Living Collective. And I guess that's it for today. Enjoy gardening, have a great time, give it a go, and I will catch you in the next episode.